This conversation gets really real for me, so I hope you will stick through to the end and take away something not only for your own parenting, if you're a parent to toddlers or young humans, but also something for your own self to look at your childhood and what this conversation may bring up for you. I'm putting AI to the test to see if it can coach me in a real life coaching request. I'm going to share the conversation with you so that you can benefit from the insights I personally gain. And also, I want to reflect the feedback that I have about the quality of coaching that this bot is capable of. If you'd like to try it for yourself, I'll include the link to download it for free in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see the transcript next to me here on the screen. But if you're just listening, then I'm going to be reading back the conversation to you instead of reading it in real time as I go through the coaching request. I got some feedback that the audio was a little bit weird last time, so this gives us a little better chance of you hearing everything and for us to get really into the nuances of this conversation. Okay, let's dive in. I'd like support in ending the power struggles with my toddler. I recently started reading a couple toddler parenting books with my husband that I think are helping, but while I'm finding good tools for language and strategies to stay connected with her, I'm curious about the part of me that becomes very activated when she looks me in the eye and openly defies me. I can feel the mechanisms of how I was parented kick in. My nervous system activates, and suddenly I want to win or make her listen rather than stay grounded and connected to her. I want to avoid fear-based authoritarian parenting, but sometimes when I tell her I need to step away for a moment because we've entered a power struggle, she seems to panic that I'm leaving her and immediately does the thing I'm asking her to do. I would like to avoid threats, bribes, or manipulation to get her to do what I'm asking. Can we explore what is being activated in me specifically and ways I can stay in relationship with her so I can do my own inner work? Yes, this is such a tender and important place to work because you're not just trying to handle behavior, you're trying to interrupt a whole inherited nervous system pattern while still leading your child. I'll help you separate what may be happening inside you from what may be happening inside her, and then give you language and inner practices that keep connection without using fear, bribery, or control. It did the thing where it wrote a book and a half about what I should do. And this is a conversation unlike the marriage one, where I asked for tactics to implement for our own communication skills. This is one that I really wanted to be a conversation. So what I said was, pause. I'd really like a coaching conversation. So please ask me one question at a time. Sometimes we just have to redirect it and retrain it in the moment. So the bot said, absolutely, thank you for redirecting me. Let's slow way down and make this a coaching conversation. When Grace looks you in the eye and openly defies you, what is the first meaning your body makes of that moment before your more conscious parenting values come online? So, I mean, I've covered this in the other parts of this series this week and in earlier episodes, but one thing that this bot does hit or miss is establish a coaching request. It doesn't really dig that deep into clarifying what I want out of the conversation or, defining really the boundaries of the conversation so that we're not just having like a huge life size conversation in a short 10 to 15 question series. It doesn't usually set up those parameters with me. So that in and of itself is a pretty big demerit to the quality of coaching, because if you don't actually know what the client wants to achieve in the conversation, it can meander and either hit or miss. In this conversation, I will say, because I self-coach my way often in these videos, you will notice I tend to get a lot out of these conversations regardless of how well it's coaching me, but I do just say that for educational purposes. If you are looking for a life coach, you don't want someone who talks a ton at you, and you also want somebody who takes good care of you and your agenda, and setting up an agreement at the beginning of the call is very important for that. So just wanted to put that in there. But this one just dives straight in, and you will find we go pretty deep today. I feel someone asserting power over me, and it makes me feel disrespected and unheard. It reminds me of how I felt as a child when I needed to make them hear me, and I was frequently discouraged from talking back, which was usually me seeking to feel heard and understood first. That makes so much sense. So when Grace defies you, it's not landing as my toddler is having a toddler moment. It's landing somewhere much deeper as someone is overpowering me again. I'm not being heard again. I have to fight to matter again. And then the younger part of you comes online, the part who wasn't trying to be disrespectful, she was trying to be understood. That feels really important because it means your urge to win may actually be an old urge to finally be heard. One question: when you feel that "I need to make her hear me" energy rise up, what does that younger part of you wish someone had said to her back then? I said, I think on the deepest level, I just wanted someone to reflect back to me that they understood why I was frustrated. And this part of life is hard, not getting what we want. But of course, some part of me wanted to get my way or what I wanted. But I think I would have felt totally differently about it in my own childhood if I was first seen and validated before corrected or told no. I know that on a logical level as a parent, but in the moment when she does or says things to test me or raises her voice at me, despite my best efforts, her activation can lead to my activation. And then it can lead to performing hearing her or saying the right thing rather than genuinely staying light and connected. Is it better to perform and say the thing, like fake it till I make it? Or what do I do if she's pushed a button in me, but really she wants to be heard and understood and get what she wants, but more so the first? It said, yes, sometimes it is better to say the validating thing even before you fully feel it, but I would not call that performing. I'd call it choosing the bridge back to yourself, because in that moment, the words are not only for her, they are a handrail for you. You're giving your nervous system a script that keeps you from falling into the old pathway. But here's an important distinction. Performing validation sounds like I'm saying the right conscious parenting words while secretly trying to get you to calm down so I can stop feeling activated. Practicing validation sounds like I am activated and I'm choosing the next truest available sentence. So you don't need to be perfectly warm, light, and connected. That may be too high a bar for in the heated moment. You just need to be honest enough and safe enough. Something like, I'm having a hard time staying soft right now, but I do understand that you're frustrated. Or, I hear you. You really don't want this. I'm going to take a breath so I can help you kindly. Or, I'm not mad at you. My body is getting stirred up and I'm going to slow down. That's not fake, that's integrated. It lets you validate her without abandoning the truth that you're activated too. One question. When you imagine saying, I'm having a hard time staying soft right now, but I do understand that you're frustrated, what happens inside your body? Relief, resistance, fear, guilt, or something else? I like that it is pointing to something somatic. It's pointing to attunement to the body. It's pointing to like registering my own feelings because that skill as a parent begins with us. If we are neglecting the way that we're feeling, if we're ignoring the signals from our own body, it's very natural for us to then ignore the signals or the communication we're receiving from our kids. So I love that it is turning the mirror on me and focusing on what my body is saying and responding to and having me practice some somatic awareness in that moment. Interoception for those of us who've been watching these videos for a little while. And I generally appreciate this question. Relief, curiosity, a slight rewording to staying connected rather than soft, because that sounds more like me. I definitely think that will help because pretending I'm not feeling anything isn't working. Saying the intentional things is a handrail in some ways, but it doesn't feel honest if I don't acknowledge that this is also hard for me. I said something like that this morning, like, I'm having trouble being patient right now. And it worked well to stay in the room and stay connected to her. I've read in other books, like, I need a minute to step away and I'll be right back. And right now, when I use that language, she thinks I'm leaving/abandoning her, and she immediately submits to me, which just doesn't feel good. So I think just acknowledging I'm having a hard time with blank is a better direction. It said, yes, I think you just found a really important distinction. I need to step away and I'll be right back. Maybe a perfectly healthy tool in general, but for this child in this season with this dynamic, it sounds like it's functioning as an attachment alarm. So even if the words are gentle, her body may hear, Mommy is leaving because I'm too much. Whereas, I'm having trouble staying connected right now, so I'm going to slow down and stay with you. Feels more congruent with your actual goal. It gives you honesty without making her responsible for your feelings. It also gives her reassurance without making your dysregulation invisible. I also love that staying connected feels more like you. That language has such a different nervous system quality than saying soft. It says, I'm still here, I'm still your person, I'm working to stay with you. And I want to name something. The fact that I'm having trouble being patient right now worked this morning is not small. That means honesty may be a portal back into connection for you, not a rupture. One question. When you say, I'm having trouble staying connected right now, what do you imagine Grace needs to hear immediately after that so she doesn't feel responsible for fixing it? I thought that was a great question in general. Like, ooh, man, it's hard to have needs at the same time as your kids having needs and to be responsible for both of them at the same time. Because it is easy to fall into a trap where we need our kids to be a certain way in order for us to feel okay. And that's just not how parenting works. Like, we have got to take care of ourselves and them at the same time. And that is a huge demand of our capacity. So, this conversation goes very deep for me, and not only my self awareness, which we're getting into now, but also just the real crux of parenting that is this challenge of they are not responsible for being a certain way so we can feel calm. Whew. I said, great question, because it is a great question. I think saying something like, I love you and I want to figure this out with you, but I think I need to take a breath or slow this down, etc., right now. However, when I say things like that lately, she can become more escalated. She'll immediately say, no, don't say that. Like she senses me practicing something new, intended to de escalate things, and she just wants to plow ahead and feel the big thing she's feeling. How can I support her and me at the same time in those moments? It said, that makes so much sense. It sounds like when you start using the regulation language, she may experience it as another form of being managed, even if your intention is connection. That's very true. Like her nervous system says, no, don't calm me down. Don't narrate me. Don't shift the moment. Stay with the intensity of what I'm trying to show you. So in those moments, I'd try making your support less verbal and less obviously strategic. Instead of, I love you and I want to figure this out with you, but I need to take a breath. Maybe, okay, I hear you. And then breathe silently. Or, you don't want me to say that. Then pause. Or, I'll stop talking for a second. Then stay nearby, grounded, and let your body do more of the communicating. For a highly perceptive toddler, fewer words can feel more respectful. She may not need the perfect phrase. She may need to feel, Mommy is not scared of my big feelings. Mommy is not trying to hurry me into calm. Mommy is not leaving. Mommy is still leading. For you, the inner version might be, I can still regulate without announcing it. I can stay connected without explaining connection. Her escalation does not mean my tool isn't working. The move may be validate the protest against the tool. You don't want me to say that. Got it. Not sarcastically, not defeated, just cleanly. Then hold the boundary or stay present. One question. When she says, no, don't say that, what feeling comes up in you first? Embarrassment, frustration, panic, rejection, anger, helplessness, something else. It's doing the thing it likes to do, which is give me an open question, but then give me lots of multiple choice options, which I think is part of the algorithmic AI brain. It likes to kind of have a choose your own adventure path here of like, when I say certain answers, it will go certain directions. But it is what it is, and I don't hate this question in the slightest. I said, frustration and helplessness, like nothing I do works right. It really is such a trial and error experience right now of trying to say the honest thing that keeps me connected or minimizing my words. I like the idea of just hearing her saying, you don't want me to say that, got it. So I still said the thing, but just acknowledge she doesn't want that. Yes, that response feels very clean. You don't want me to say that, got it. It does a few things at once. It lets her protest without you defending yourself. It keeps you from over-explaining. It helps you stay in the room emotionally. And it interrupts the nothing I do works spiral, because now the goal is not to find the perfect sentence that makes her calm down. The goal is to keep adapting while staying anchored. That helplessness makes so much sense, though, because when you're trying so hard to not repeat old patterns, and then even your gentlest tools seem to upset her, it can feel like I'm failing either way. But I don't think that's what's happening. I think you're learning the difference between a tool that's meant to control the outcome and a tool that's meant to keep you in a relationship while the outcome is still messy. The tool, quote unquote, worked if it helped you not abandon yourself, not scare her, not leave the relationship, and not collapse the boundary, even if she still screamed, protested, and said, no, don't say that. One question. When the feeling, nothing I do works right, comes up, whose disappointment or criticism does that voice sound most like? I said, young me, like teenager me, who felt frustrated that even when I tried to say it the way I was supposed to say something, it still registered as wrong or bad with my parents. Oh, wow, yes, that feels like the heart of it. So when Grace says, no, don't say that, it may not only feel like your toddler rejecting your words. It may touch teenager you who was trying so hard to communicate correctly and still got met with wrong tone, wrong timing, wrong attitude, still not acceptable. No wonder helplessness comes up. The old wound is not just, I wasn't heard. It's also, even when I try to do it right, I'm still wrong. And that is exactly the kind of wound that can make parenting feel like a performance review instead of a relationship. So maybe part of the repair is letting the moment be imperfect without making it mean you're bad. One question. When teenage you hears, no, don't say that from Grace, what does she most need you, adult you, to say back to her internally at that moment? I think this question is solid gold. The fact that it's asking me to be in conversation with different parts of me is very elevated therapy and coaching. It's parts work. It's very connected to the work that I do all the time, where different parts of us have competing needs and different parts of us have different roles that we can play for each other within ourselves. And so when my teenager self starts to take over my body and my emotions, when my toddler's yelling at me, to have my adult me not just parent my child in that moment, but parent myself is inner child work. It's what healing requires. It is what conscious parenting requires. It's even what gentle parenting requires. And it's really deep and transformative work. So I said, it's okay. You're not doing it wrong. Keep going. Stay in it. It said, yes, that feels like the anchor. It's okay. You're not doing it wrong. Keep going. Stay in it. That is so different from trying to find the perfect parenting phrase. It gives you the experience you needed, someone steady beside you while you're trying. And it also keeps you from making Grace's reaction the grade of your performance. So in the moment, there may be two tracks. With Grace, simple and present. You don't want me to say that, got it. Inside yourself, I'm not doing it wrong, keep going, stay in it. One question. When you imagine actually using that inner phrase in the heated moment, what do you think would be the hardest part to believe? It's okay, you're not doing it wrong, keep going, or stay in it? I really was surprised by this question in the best way, because it's not just it's not trying to help me integrate the action on a practical level. It's asking, do you actually believe this? And if not, what part do you not believe? I think that's a really valuable question. So I'm impressed, Chad. I said, I think the stay in it. I feel like my heart retreats a little when I'm scolded, even by a toddler. It said, that is such a clear and tender noticing. When she says, no, don't say that, some part of you experiences it as being scolded, and then your heart does what it learned to do, retreat to safety. So stay in it may not mean try harder to be present. It may mean something much smaller, like let one tiny part of my heart stay in the room. Not your whole heart, not full openness, not radiant conscious parenting presence. Just one tiny part. Maybe even I can soften 1%. I can keep my eyes kind. I can keep my body near. I can let my voice get quieter instead of sharper. Staying in it may not be an emotional state at first. It may be a physical choice. I love that distinction. One question. When your heart retreats, where do you feel that in your body? Chest, throat, belly, face, shoulders, somewhere else. Again, body-focused questions. Love that. I said, I think it's throat/chest. It said, that makes sense. Throat/chest feels like the place where your voice and your connection both get threatened. Almost like if I keep speaking, I'll be wrong. If I keep my heart open, I'll get hurt. So the practice may be very small and body-based. Hand to chest or collarbone, one slow exhale, then internally, throat. You don't have to prove it perfectly. Chest. You don't have to close all the way. 1% open, one sentence at a time. And then externally, very simply, got it, you don't want me to say that. One question. When you feel it in your throat/chest, do you notice more of an urge to explain yourself, go quiet, get sharper, or leave/withdraw? I said, explain myself or withdraw. It said, yes, that pair makes so much sense. Explain myself is the part trying to get understood. Withdraw is the part trying to stop the pain of not being understood. So in that moment, both parts are trying to protect you from the same old wound. I'm being misunderstood again. And with a toddler, explaining usually doesn't satisfy that wound because she can't offer you the kind of mature understanding teenage you needed. But withdrawing also recreates the loneliness. So the middle path may be, do not explain yourself to Grace, explain yourself to yourself. Inside, I'm not being bad, I'm trying to stay connected. She doesn't have to understand me right now. Outside, got it. I'll use fewer words. That is so powerful because you're not abandoning yourself, but you're also not asking her to validate you. One question. When you feel the urge to explain yourself to Grace, what do you most want her to understand about you in that moment? Excellent follow-up question. I said, I think I can go into, I understand you, but, and telling her how to practice feeling that feeling instead of taking it out on me or being physical with toys or something. It's corrective in nature. And sometimes I also try to share things like, I feel upset when you do blank. But that has backfired, and now she uses it on me. Like, I feel upset when you tell me to stop playing with my toys, and I'm not going to do that. It's partially good she says something like that, but then it'll be used as a reason why she can't stop playing with her toys and then digs the trench deeper. It said, yes, that is such a good catch. It sounds like the I understand you, but move is your nervous system trying to get to the lesson quickly so the situation feels contained. But to Grace, it may feel like the validation is a doorway into correction, so she either resists it or turns the language back on you. And honestly, her saying, I feel upset when you tell me to stop playing, is developmentally kind of beautiful and wildly inconvenient. She has learned that feelings matter. Now she's trying to use feelings as authority. So the next layer may be helping her learn feelings are welcome, feelings are not always instructions. Something like, yes, you feel upset, that makes sense, and it's still time to stop. No big lesson, no but, no explaining how to do feelings correctly in the hot moment. Maybe your practice is validate without teaching. Teaching can come later when no one is activated. One question. When she uses emotional language as a reason not to cooperate, like, I feel upset, so I'm not going to stop. What do you feel most pulled to do? Explain the principle, prove the boundary, correct the misuse, or reassure her? I think it's more of the, I hear you're upset, but, so I guess that's correcting? It seems like the only real difference between that and, yes, you feel upset, that makes sense, and it's time to stop, is just the word and instead of but. It replied, yes, partly, and really does matter. But I think the difference is not just the word, it's the nervous system posture underneath the sentence. I hear you're upset, but can subtly carry, I need to move you past this feeling so we can get to the point. Yes, you feel upset. That makes sense. And it's still time to stop. Carries more of your feeling is real and the boundary is real. Neither one cancels out the other. So the and is not magic. It just helps you embody the truth that validation is not agreement and a feeling is not a veto. Put that on a shirt, man. That is a good quote. You are not correcting her feeling. You're correcting the conclusion she's drawing from the feeling. She's saying, I feel upset, therefore I don't have to stop. You're saying, you feel upset, and it's time to stop. That is such an important life skill. Feelings matter, feelings get heard, feelings do not always decide what happens next. One question. When you say but in those moments, do you feel like you're trying to help her understand or more like you're trying to get the situation under control? I said, I think mostly help her understand. Again, it kind of either-or'd me of like what it means to me, which for the purposes of this conversation worked fine, but it directed me and led me, which not the most ideal coaching. Then it said, that feels really important and very loving. So the impulse behind the but isn't necessarily control. It's more like, I want you to understand this so life will be easier for you. I want you to know how feelings work. I want to give you the thing I didn't get. That's beautiful, and I wonder if the only adjustment is timing. In the heated moment, her brain may not be available for understanding. So even though you're offering wisdom, she may experience it as pressure, correction, or mom is trying to get me out of my feeling. Maybe the hot moment job is not to help her understand. Maybe the hot moment job is to help her feel accompanied while the boundary happens. Then understanding can come later. One question. What do you feel afraid will happen if you don't help her understand in that moment? If you only validate, hold the boundary, and save the teaching for later? I said, I sense that it's like my voice and feelings get silenced in the process. If she says, no, don't say that, and I say, got it, you don't want me to say that, and I stop sharing my experience to stay connected, then I'm not sure how to emotionally stay in the room. At that point, I think I would push my feelings down to stay with her physically and say, got it, you don't want me to say that, and then say, I see that you're upset and it's time to go to bath now. And then she may just keep escalating and try to push my buttons, or she'll say she needs space. I'm fine with giving her space, but I'll ask how much space does she need? And we'll set a timer for like 5 minutes. Often, when the timer dings, she'll say she's not ready and wants 5 more minutes and 5 more minutes over and over. And I'm losing sight of if this is just a ploy to keep playing or if she's genuinely using that time to regulate and be ready for the next step of the routine. It said, yes, this is the exact knot. You're naming two things that are both true. You don't want to center your feelings in a way that asks her to take care of you. And you also don't want to stay connected to mean self-erasure. That distinction matters so much. I don't think the goal is for you to stop sharing your experience forever. I think the goal is to not ask the heated moment to hold both your full emotional reality and hers at the same time. Oof, is that true, man? So instead of sharing your feelings to her in that moment, maybe you need a way to keep your feelings alive inside yourself. Almost like to Grace, got it, you don't want me to say that. Inside you, my voice still matters. I'm choosing fewer words right now, not disappearing. That's different than pushing your feelings down. It's more like putting them in your own hand instead of placing them in hers. And with that timer space piece, I hear the uncertainty. Is this regulation or delay? My instinct is that it may be both. She may genuinely need space, and she may also discover that space postpones the thing she doesn't want. That doesn't make her manipulative in a sinister way. It makes her a smart toddler learning what works. So maybe the boundary becomes, yes, you can have space. Space is for getting ready, not for restarting play. Or you can have 5 minutes of space. When the timer rings, I'll help you start. Not, are you ready? Because if she's not ready, now the routine depends on her readiness. More like, the timer rang, you wanted more time, I understand. I'm going to help you now. One question. When you imagine saying, my voice still matters, I'm choosing fewer words right now, not disappearing, does that feel believable in your body, or does some part of you still feel silenced? I said, very honestly, because I was thinking that actually when it reflected that to me, I said, I don't think it feels believable or actionable, honestly, because I don't think I can say those words to myself while saying what I need to say to Grace at the same time. And it said, that's really helpful. And then we shouldn't try to force that mantra. If it doesn't feel believable or actionable, it's probably too cognitive. Yes. Like asking the wounded part of you to be soothed by a sentence when what she actually needs is a move. Maybe your voice doesn't need to be preserved through an internal affirmation. Maybe it needs to be preserved through a tiny embodied act of agency. Something like, I'm going to take one breath before I answer. Not as a teaching tool for Grace, but as a boundary inside yourself. Or even, I'm going to put my hand here while I listen. That way you're not disappearing. You're doing one concrete thing that says, I'm still with me. And then you can say fewer words to her without it feeling like you've been erased. See, this is great. This is gold. I'm getting so much out of this, and I hope you are too. But I believe this would have been addressed sooner if it hadn't given me so many multiple choice options that I had to follow its script. That's the thing with open-ended questions in quality coaching, is that the client is able to get to their own core awareness so much sooner than if you think you know the answer for the client. That is the biggest challenge of really high-level coaching, is asking questions you don't know the answers to and letting the client really discover their own truth. And sometimes the client will say something and you as the coach, and maybe the client as well, if they're super in tune with themselves, will know that's not quite it. And they'll have to keep going to find what that layer beneath that layer actually is. But you don't ever get there if you're inserting words for the client or giving them multiple choice options like this coach is doing. So we eventually did get here where I was the one that said, I don't think saying that to myself is going to work. And what would work for me is X, Y, or Z. One question. When Grace says, no, don't say that, what tiny action would help you feel like you are still allowed to exist in the room? See, it should just stop right there. Like, that should have been the question a few questions ago of like, what action would help you feel like you are still allowed to exist in the room? End of question, question mark, give me space to answer. Instead, it asked me this many questions later, and it still gives me a multiple choice here. It tells me a breath, a hand on a chest, looking away for a second, sitting down, saying, I'm going to pause, something else. Like, it does give me the option of something else, but it's already planted all of those other ideas in my head of what I should do or could do that it's hard for me to generate on my own. So it's just, that's my ongoing gripe with this thing, is Shut up. Let me answer. All right. I said, I like both of those, although I may make it more breaths, like 3 breaths, so it slows us both down more. Yes, 3 breaths feels much more actionable. It gives you a ritual, not just a concept. And I especially like that it doesn't require Grace to approve of your language, understand your intention, or validate your experience. It's something you do to stay with yourself while staying with her. It could sound very simple. Got it. You don't want me to say that. I'm going to take 3 breaths and then breathe. Not as a performance, not dramatically, just enough to reclaim your body. And if she says, no, don't breathe, because toddlers are incredible little spiritual teachers slash hecklers, I love that. And number one, this is exactly what I expect will happen. And also number two, spiritual hecklers? I mean, what? I love that. And what in the world? Chat GPT. Okay. Okay. So it said, if she says, no, don't breathe, because toddlers are incredible little spiritual teachers slash hecklers, you can say, you don't want me to breathe either. I'm still going to. That may be the cleanest version of my voice matters in action. I don't need to explain myself, but I also don't need to abandon myself. One question. When you imagine taking those 3 breaths while she's still upset or protesting, what do you think will be hardest? Tolerating her escalation, resisting the urge to explain, or trusting the pause is allowed? Again, with the multiple choice. All right, moving on. Tolerating her protest and escalation while I'm trying to de-escalate in myself. It said, yes, that feels like a real practice point. Not can I make her de-escalate, but can I de-escalate while she's still escalated? That is a much harder skill because her protest can make your nervous system feel like your regulation is failing. But it isn't failing, it's just not controlling her. When maybe the inner phrase for the 3 breaths is her protest is still allowed to be here. Not because she gets to do anything she wants, but because her protest does not have to stop before you can stay grounded. And then your body has one job for these 3 breaths. Do not decide what to do yet. Just let the protest exist without answering it immediately. One question. When she escalates while you're trying to breathe, what does your body fear will happen when you don't respond right away? I said, she will be a toddler and say, no, stop breathing, and try to physically hit or push against me to make me stop. And then I really want to leave the room. It said, yes, that makes total sense. Because at that point, it's no longer just verbal protest. Her body is trying to control your body. Stop breathing, pushing, hitting, making you stop. And that lands exactly on your original wound. Someone asserting power over me and I'm not allowed to exist freely. So of course your body wants to leave. And I think this is where we need to separate staying connected and staying physically available to be hit or controlled. You do not have to let her body override your body in order to stay loving. So important. And I'm really glad that it stuck up for that message because I noticed it now reading back that was what I was kind of implying, that by staying with her physically means that I might allow her reaction physically, but I'm really glad it reinforced the physical boundary here. Anyway, you do not have to let her body override your body in order to stay loving. A possible middle path is, I won't let you hit/push me. I'm going to move my body back. I'm still here. Or, you don't want me to breathe. I'm still allowed to breathe. I won't let you push me. Then you physically create a little space, not as abandonment, not as punishment, not I'm leaving you, but as a body boundary. That might be the key repair for both of you. Mommy stays connected and mommy's body still belongs to mommy. One question. When she pushes or hits to make you stop, what boundary would feel most honest and least abandoning? Holding her hands gently, moving your body back, standing up, or saying, I'm right here and I won't let you hit me while blocking. I said, I try any of these in the moment until something works. Usually me standing up is the thing that signals to her that I might leave and she tries to settle more. I just don't want to create insecure/anxious attachment with her. It said, I hear you, and I want to be really gentle but clear here. Standing up to protect your body is not the same thing as creating insecure attachment. The attachment wound would come more from, I withdraw love when you're difficult, not from, I stay loving and I won't let you hit me. So the repair is not necessarily to avoid standing up. It is to make standing up mean something different. Not, I'm leaving because you're too much, but I'm making my body safe so I can stay connected. You might say very simply, I'm standing up to keep my body safe. I'm not leaving you. And if she panics, I know you don't want me to go. I'm not going. I'm right here. Then you can stand a few feet away, stay visible, soften your face, and repeat less. The goal is to let her body learn mommy can create space without disappearing. One question. When you imagine saying, I'm standing up to keep my body safe, I'm not leaving you, does that feel calming, too wordy, or like it might still trigger her? I said, calming, and I'm ready to wrap up now. I think I had dug deep enough at that point. And it repeated a lot of the takeaways for me. It gave me 6 points. And then it ended with, this is beautiful work, Ellen. Not easy work, but very, very alive. What an acknowledgement from a robot. I'm alive. Thank you, robot. Again, I feel like it sneaks up on me sometimes how deep these AI coaching conversations can go. And I have to say, in part, I think it was due to really powerful questioning from the AI bot. The things that work really well in this line, I would say, of questioning was that it used a lot of body based awareness, which is a core pillar within my own practice of coaching. And also, it used a lot of the parenting techniques that I have like shared here publicly online and that I've programmed into it. So, a lot of the principles it was drawing from were grounded in research and experts and, things that I espouse personally. And so it was basically doing a really great job of redirecting me back to the things that I know and believe in and stand for, and just helping me kind of tweak and navigate the nuance of my own dynamic with my child. Because it's not one size fits all. The principles may be universal for people who believe in conscious parenting, but how that is integrated is so unique from parent to child. And as you saw, like my core wounds coming up in parenting is a part of what conscious parenting work requires, and gentle parenting. But for me, I would not have access to gentle parenting if I didn't do the work that conscious parenting teaches me to do. To me, gentle parenting kind of gives you the end goal, like the outcome of parenting, where obviously the goal is to really stay regulated and grounded in the way that you respond and remain the adult the whole time. But I don't really know how to access that personally and authentically unless I do this kind of work and build this kind of awareness about my own wounds as a kid that I'm working through in real time by being mirrored from my own kid. And also, parenting kind of brings up things that you've long forgotten about how you were raised or how you felt as a child, because it'll just suddenly feel like, oh, this feels really familiar, even though this is a situation I've never been in with my child, which is the beauty and the very difficult challenge of parenting. So overall, I thought it asked very powerful questions. I thought that it lacked structure and really like guardrails for what did I want out of this conversation? What was my end goal? What was my agenda? What is in the way of that? It didn't clarify any of those agreements up front. So, like I said at the beginning, it's kind of hit or miss. Like sometimes it hits and sometimes it just totally misses because the line of questioning is just isn't drilling down into the place that I need it to. In this conversation, it happened to be successful. It definitely hit the core awareness that I was looking for out of this question. It gave me some very valuable tools to use and prompts and strategies, and also really cool awareness points. Like it asked really great questions that got me to develop my own awareness. And I will say I definitely self-coached my fair share through this conversation enough to guide it to where I wanted it to go. So I will say if you use this, you may have to do that. You may have to direct it like, I'm not going that way. I want to talk about this. And that's okay. A tool is a tool, and we get to be in charge. We get to use it the way that we want to use it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We just get to use it. So just use the tool. That's the takeaway now. I really hope that this conversation was supportive and enlightening to you as it was for me. And again, I really appreciate hearing from you in the comments about what your takeaways are, what your experience is with the AI chatbot. And, hello, fellow parents. I'd love to know what kind of work you're doing internally to be a toddler parent. Thank you so much for watching. And thanks for being here. And I'll see you in the next one. And with that, we've come to the end of today's episode on the Contentment Creator channel, where we put AI to the test with some real life coaching. Whether you caught the whole episode or one of our segments, either way, thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. And I hope you are subscribed so you don't miss another episode. Join me in my mission to help a world full of content creators become a world of contentment creators. Bye, y'all.